Well, welcome, and again, thank you, Candace, and everybody for being here, and each of you for taking care and for caring about our environment. We're new to this fight, so I'm going to take up from what Richard was speaking. I live out in Ottawa, east end of Ottawa, which is where Carlsbad Springs is, and in June of last year, we were thrown into an EA process that had been underway for over a year, so we were thrown partway through. We weren't involved in the original. And that EA process was actually in a different municipality, so not even within the city of Ottawa. And at that point in time, we were identified as a possible site, a second site, for a mega landfill, 460 acres, so playing on project, which is unprecedented in Ottawa area. This was a private landfill project, that is 4 times larger than any of the footprint that we have currently out there today. So we came into the game late into the game, and as it turns out at this point, while we were brought in as a second site, we are now the preferred site, and it is our site, the Carlsbad site, that they're looking at. The terms of references were approved by the Ministry of the Environment last year just before Christmas. So here we are, kind of sort of baptism by fire for us out there. So getting into the process late, there was no notice of commencement for us. There was no prior, information, nothing to collect from. There was an open house that was held by the proponents right at the beginning, not in our community, but at an external remote location to inform us of the project. By the way, in the project charter, this is open house and consultation 3, because don't forget, we came into the game late, although this is the first time that we heard about the project. Equally is, while they had prepared a draft TOR for the first site for the other municipality, by the way, which I should point out is a completely different situation, completely different geology than what we have in our area, completely different cities, we didn't have the benefit of a draft. So it's not like we could even have an opportunity to review details or even know what was coming our way. So we were identified as this project in June. The full TOR was released to us in the fall, that same fall, 3 months later. So we had a 3-month window to get collected, to pull everything together, to find out what this was all about so that we could participate in the public review of the TOR. By the way, our TOR was 5,000 pages, and we had to sit there, divide it, and conquer it, and go through it. Okay, it's obvious that this project is being fast-tracked at this point in time. The other thing that we have that's unique to our community is we do have a 50% francophone base in our area, and the TOR, which defines the studies and plays the rules of the game, were not provided in French, nor was any documentation provided in French. So notwithstanding that we were at disadvantage to start off with in trying to sort through all of this, half of our residents couldn't even read the material in their language of preferred choice and what they were most comfortable in. The other thing is there is a government review team that goes through this, that provides input, various government agencies, expert matters that go through this, that look at this. The government review team had been given the draft TOR, which was for the other site, not for our site. And we're not even sure at this point in time whether they did see the final TOR, which is really for the Carlsbad site, the second site that came into it. And the reason that we say that is there were a couple of agencies that we contacted, major agencies, federal agencies in the Ottawa area, who hadn't heard about it, didn't know about it. We informed them that they need to get this and to respond to this. So I guess one of the questions that our community has at this point in time is, how is it that a proponent can choose an initial site, then partway through the process simply add another site in a completely different city with completely different geology, with completely different makeup, and have this done under the same TOR? This really is the second site and should have been a second process through all of this. The other thing that we are finding at this point in time is, notwithstanding the process and what's going on, is the proponent continuously misrepresents their project today as primarily a recycling and recovery center. So if you take a look at the flyers and the glossies, it's all about recycling and promoting and doing the best. The one thing they forget to mention, or mention very little, is the proposed mega landfill that comes along with this recycling center. In our particular case, what the proponent has stated is 87%, they're going to recycle 12% of the waste coming in. 87% is going to be landfilled. They can only state to the provincial norms at this point. Their intent is to do more, but at this point in time, they can't make any assurances or show us any plans. So while they extol the virtues of this recycling center, none of us here have a problem with recycling. In this particular case, 87% is going to be landfill. So landfill should be the biggest part of their project. The other item is, for those of you who saw Harold's report, or maybe not, we've been doing number crunching and came up with the same thing. In this particular case, this 460-acre mega landfill was approved for a scope DA, which means they do not have to prove need. If we take a look at the IC&I, or the industrial and commercial waste in the City of Ottawa today, according to the MOE figures, we in the City of Ottawa generate 457,000 metric tons of IC&I waste per year that we have to landfill. That's taking out the 12% that gets recycled. We currently have capacity for 817,750 tons. So we have the capacity that we need. With the Carp Road EA approval that is going through, or process that is going through, and the Carlsbad Spring proposal that is on the table today, we're going to have double that capacity, which is already double of what we need. So the question that we have is, where is this garbage coming from? This is not for the Ottawa region and our area. And don't forget, the certificates of approval and stuff like that, while you try to mitigate it and you say take it from, and the proponent will say it is for the Ottawa area, primarily for the capital region, it isn't. On their maps it goes down to Belleville and for the province, so if you read between the lines. So we're wondering why, for a mega landfill and something this enormous and this serious, was a scope DA allowed to go through? Why were they allowed to bypass all of that? These concerns were brought to the proponent and to the Ministry of the Environment, but they were ignored. Even the comments from the City of Ottawa were ignored. The terms of reference were passed without any kind of translation, without adequate consultation from what we feel in our community, and over the loud objections of our community in the City of Ottawa, who know the site is not suitable. Our campaign is called Dump This Dump Too, primarily because we are a second site that was added to this TOR, but this is the second time we fight a landfill for this proposed location. So how we know the site isn't right is, in the 1980s, this exact site was thoroughly investigated by the municipality of Ottawa-Carleton for a landfill. It was studied for 6 years before the project was finally dropped, because a landfill, we are in a very heavy Leda clay base, 100 feet deep, so the landfill would take at least 4 times as much area on that site than any other site. So they can't pile it high, so they have to take more land. So completely irresponsible land use at this case. The soil is so soft, as a matter of fact, that the Boundary Road overpass that runs boundary over the 417 had to be redesigned to stand on piers 100 feet deep into the bedrock to prevent it from sinking. The site floods semi-regularly because the water table is at the surface. There is sand layers on the top surface, as well as sand layers that go through the various lower levels. And these sand layers continue off the property, and they're the aquifers supplying our local shallow wells. In addition to that, is the soil at the site is classed as the most vulnerable or at risk during a seismic events, which will be increased shaking, so it's like the Jello effect. We've also seen reports over the last year where the Leda clay has liquefied. That's the properties, the soil conditions that we have there. So it's not a slight Leda clay, it's 100 feet deep of Leda clay that you have there. And we are also known in our area as an area of high seismic risk. So what we are asking is studies need to take this into account. As part of the EA, as part of the studies that are being done, we're saying this has to be studied. It's a real risk in our area, and we need to know how things have to be dealt with according in that. And so because of this, the above had been fairly considered in the early phases of the municipal site selection process, and what the city realized, or the regional municipality realized, would have resulted in serious financial consequences, according to a summary report that was provided, which is why the project was shut down or abandoned at that point in time. So this is the second time. We have taken every opportunity to tell the proponent and the ministry that the project cannot proceed at this site, but so far no one is listening, and that is unacceptable. Hydrogeologically unsuitable sites like this must be excluded from waste disposal proposals once they have been identified. Communities like ours should not have to refight expensive common sense battles we have already won. So Carlsbad and the City of Ottawa is not willing to host this project. And as Richard said, the province of Ontario has to have a strategy, a long-term strategy to do with this landfill. It's not just because you're a private individual or a private company with money that should give you the right to build one of these mega landfills. Thank you.